Oh, okay. Unmuted. We're live. Welcome everyone. It is Saturday night. I am joined by wonderful Mike from Faraday Research, Jeremiah from Exotic Propulsion, and we're going tonight more in depth to what Mike shared with us last night at the end of League of Extraordinary Inventors stream about this new discovery with the Giza pyramids and a new type of scanning that was able to do this deep penetration where they have found these mega macro structures that, well, from the engineering perspective in the minds of the likes of Jeremiah, myself, Mike, it's like we instantly recognize and see parts of the technology that is included in what these scans are showing, and that it confirms like these predictions and ideas that a lot of us have had and held for many years, looking into what the actual function of these devices must have been. Um, yeah, so Jeremiah, do you want to maybe give a little bit of your thoughts of what you were saying to me before we went live, um, on your initial reaction? Oh,
Yeah, I can get into that. I'm trying to find out exactly what date that team released the scan information and their initial findings. I'm trying to figure out when that was released and how long it's been out now.
Yeah, it was on the 15th of March, I believe.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
Yeah,
I'll stop looking for it then.
yeah, it was kind of funny because I think I think our show kind of got the shotgun on it. We were fortunate to actually broadcast that video that came out on the discovery in Giza. So now today I was looking at a bunch of channels, and now they're starting to show it. So I think we got the shotgun on it. We were one of the first to get it put out. Sorry, Jeremiah, go
That's
ahead.
awesome. Okay, so yeah, Bernie asked me, what do we do with all this now that we know these things, these structures exist underneath that pyramid? What are they used for? How can we trust the scans, and what's the purpose in it all, right? So there's been this long-standing theory popped around for a while, which is one that Tesla himself had been highly interested in. One of the reasons why he had studied deeply the structures of the pyramids and their position and their alignment. He had traveled quite a few places over the world to check out different ancient technologies and try to wrap his head around what they used to know that we don't know. So Tesla had this concept in his head that we are surrounded with an almost inexhaustible number of different types of subtle energies which exist well above and below the technologically available ranges that we have to work with, and exist in forms that we don't have the ability to actually detect or utilize. But those types of energies could be accessed through sympathetic resonance, through the harmonics of other different types of energy that we have, like sound, light, electromagnetic waves, or just plain electric fields that are being mechanically oscillated. So there's lots of different ways to sort of do it. But the pyramids, they're this giant structure that sticks up into the air on a flat plane, which is they're the tallest thing around, and constantly all over the entire surface of the planet, we have ionic downdrift that's being pumped by the sun as high energy particles enter our ionosphere and head down towards the ground. Eventually, they'll reach the ground, but along that pathway, they effectively equal a current flow, which produces its own magnetic field. And that's kind of what furnishes the Schumann resonances and the variety of other fields that happen above the surface of the ground, not the telluric ones. When those ions do actually hit the ground and they finally neutralize out, there's changes in the electrical potential of the surface between the surface and the ionosphere, and that produces telluric waves, which are both magnetic and electric, and they travel longitudinally, generally closer to the surface, but some of them even through the depths of the earth and back to the other side. So the pyramids needed a way to discharge the energy that was constantly being drifted down and collected by them in order for them to produce a magnetic field that can communicate with the Earth's geomagnetic field and those fluctuations of telluric currents. So in order to do that, to facilitate the discharge of that extra power, they had to have a tremendous grounding system. Now, for many years, I theorized that they had tunnels underneath the major pyramid structures that connected to the underground aquifer and water table in order to provide themselves a better ground. And we already knew that one of these things existed in the Great Pyramid because there's this tunnel that descends diagonally, and there's a couple of big chambers underneath there, and now they're currently blocked, stoned up, but there are signs of water level erosion and marks on the walls where other minerals were deposited, showing that those chambers and all the way up the pipe had water in them at some point. And there's all kinds of signatures of that all over the pyramids. So I thought that the grounding system was probably something like that, maybe perhaps more elaborate, since we never took out those blocking stones and figured out how far down they go. But with this whole new discovery, the idea that we have these tall columns, very wide, which we don't know exactly what's inside of them, but they show up as being significantly more dense than the sand, and all the stuff underneath the pyramids, right? So they're obviously some kind of structure that, in my guess, would be to stay wet and pull up the underground water table to act as a conduit for the charge. And that kind of makes perfect sense as far as using the pyramids as a three things that can be used for. One, they can produce electromagnetic waves in the more classical sense, because a oscillated current flow will produce a magnetic field, and the electric charge that furnishes that current flow will produce the electric component, and those two combined are electromagnetic wave generators. The second thing that it can do is gravitational, which is just that having that large structure present anywhere, if it was doing nothing at all, just sitting there, would produce a gravitational node, just like any mountain does or any other large structure does that stands above the ground and offers a different point of condensed mass in a certain spot. So, and inside the pyramid, technically you have matter above you that you wouldn't normally have. So your gravitational field is slightly different there. If you were, directly at the ground level of the pyramid and you try to measure the gravity there, you'd have the Earth's gravity that's normal, your 1G pulling you down, but you'd also have this slight amount of gravity that's pulling you up because of the mass above you. And so you'd have a slightly different refractive index there in that space. And again, the same thing happens for any tunnel that's deep inside of a mountain or whatever. The deeper you go, the less gravity you're going to experience. And it's a subtle amount, but it can still be utilized. And of course, the third purpose is the human aspect. So we've got energy at the start, which can be electromagnetic, electric, or just magnetic, depends which way you want to tap it. Then we have the ability to produce gravitational effects. And then thirdly, we have the human aspect, or the spiritual aspect, and the metaphysical, which is being inside of something or near something like this that's producing these types of both gravitational and electromotive phenomena has significant effects on human psychology, the way that we feel, the senses that we experience, heightened states of awareness, that kind of stuff. So you could easily see them also being used for spiritual practices, where you have this kind of almost ethereal, what's the right word for this? Starts with an S. Can't remember it. Anyways, yeah, it puts you in a kind of a weird state. It's almost like tripping without the drugs.
Yeah, it essentially does the out of body meditative state, and that there's been a lot of fellow researchers, people I've interviewed that have actually been to the pyramids and within them, that speak about their experiences as these sort of trans-dimensional conscious amplifiers and devices and whatnot, and it's like that it all makes sense with it. To add in, and welcome Mike, good to have you, brother. So a few things. First up, I've got the actual published paper here it was in 2022 that the Italian team originally did their publishing of it. They have not actually released the actual scans as of this date, I believe, but so originally published on 19th of October 2022. Also, underneath the pyramids, it's actually known that there's several of these different tunnel chambers for the water, and that every year. So part of the engineering of this macro device and the hydrology aspects of the River Nile flooding and the floodplain and the water levels rising, flooding into these tunnels, these chambers. And now what they've found, supposedly it's like 800 meters. Some say 2 kilometers. Others are saying 800 or 600 meters. Either way, massive distance that these rods, these structures, superstructures beneath go, and that the innermost sections are supposedly hollow. And so the water would like flow in, flood it, and then somehow drain out in the dry season, possibly. And then there was some thicker casing around it, and then what looks like a on what we make, or like electromagnet, like a wire wrapped around like this solenoid, but some other material showing spiraling up in what they supposedly have found. They have chambers that look like the king's chamber, the queen's chamber, and a few more of them. As I pull up the image here of what was published, the supposed rendering. So I'm not entirely sure who published this rendering, but supposedly this is like the 3D imaging of what the scans found, both beneath and then above within the pyramid. And that here we can see what looks like the known king's chamber sort of thing, like something like this, but apparently there's a whole bunch of them built right above these tubes that have solenoids around them, and that this right here looks like the underground aqueduct that the water from the Nile would flow into, and that creates both a natural electrocharge of ionic ion charge from the water transfer to the engineering of the stones, with the insulator being the what was used to case the stones, the polished limestone or whatever, and then there's like the granite blocks that are within the chambers within the pyramid, and then the rest being what appears to be this poured geopolymer sandstone that makes up the majority of the inner rocks.
I'm trying to find it.
But
I cannot find this image anymore.
Get your thoughts on that. I just have to answer a call quickly.
All right. Well, I suppose I'll comment on the columns. I guess one of the interesting questions is why 8, and why are they configured in groups of 4 over these cubic enclosures underneath? Seems kind of odd to have a square base and then have sort of a rectangular grounding system. That's one of the things that I do not know, and it could be that simply is the position of the underground water table, or the physical size of it, why they use that kind of system. But what I was mentioning about not being able to find this diagram is there was at some point, and I'm sure it's still floating around there, an architectural drawing of what Tesla had designed for the grounding system, and it was a lot more complicated than just buried copper buses that went into the ground and had salt water around them, that kind of thing. It was, if I remember correctly, 8 columns that went down, that followed down the edges of the octagonal base for the Wardenclyffe Tower design, which was an 8-sided cone. And you could call it a sort of pyramid if you wanted. But anyways, at the corner of each of those, there was a large column, almost like a giant well, hollow on the inside, that had a spiral staircase to go down a maintenance pit. And there were then little tunnels that went out there where access and connections to the grounding system that stemmed out on the outside of those wells or those columns, almost like buried missile silos. He could maintenance them, access them, bring plumbing in, that kind of stuff, hydrate the ground if he wanted to, or even fill them with water from the water table that he tapped into if you wanted better grounding or something like that. So why 8 in Tesla's system? Why 8 in you know, in the pyramid. I have no idea if they're related at all, but I would guess that they probably are. After all, Tesla talked about how the pyramids were the inspiration for Wardenclyffe after he came to understand what they were being used for and how they worked. Any thoughts?
Yeah, what I find is amazing is the fact that Tesla figured this out without any radar. You know what I mean? Like, it kind of vindicates Tesla, I think, personally.
Yeah, in a lot of ways it does.
Yeah.
Man, I am tired today. I might have to go early on this show.
Sorry, I'm just on the phone, guys.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I think it vindicates Tesla that he basically figured out there had to have been a form of grounding system under those pyramids, because there's been many people down the road that said, you know what, this was definitely some kind of power plant.
Right. Something that people need to remember about Tesla is that the way he was tuned in, he described that all of his knowledge did not come from him. It came from him accessing some external source of information.
Right. He said he compared himself to like an antenna.
Right. And so one of the things that Tesla had talked about many times, this is both reported in his notes, in his interviews, and from stories that he told during his yearly private parties, where he hung out with like the top names in industry and finance. He would tell these wild stories, and he describes being able to look out at the world and all the technology and the structures and architecture that exist within it now are being built. He could see something almost like an aura surrounding everything. He didn't describe seeing it with his eyes, he described seeing it with his mind. But he could superimpose what he sees with his mind over what he sees with his eyes in such a way he was able to tell whether something had energy flowing through it or not, and generally what the nature of that energy was. So for him, when he went to that site, when he went, goes to visit the pyramids and other structures, he's not just seeing what we're looking at, he's seeing the entire fields that surround them and trying to simulate what they're being used for. So this is how one man could possibly figure out something that took, many, many, many years and extremely advanced top-of-the-line equipment of a new type to finally see.
Yep, we're at that age where we've got advanced radar and Doppler, radar systems for scanning what's underneath the ground now. So it's kind of cool how this is all kind of come out now, and now the Egyptians, I think, has some explaining to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also weird to think about how you could potentially have far more information about what's going on in the metaphysical side of the world without having to use the equipment. I guess I would use the comparative analogy that we find in media
Absolutely.
with magic systems, right? That the idea is a wizard or a sorceress, they need some kind of a tool to access the magic, to use it, to control its flow. But the most powerful of all the wizards and sorcerers and sorceresses is that they learned how to not need the wand, not need the staff, not need the crystal, not need the tool. They figured out how to do wandless magic, as it's generally referred to, which is just having such a deep understanding of how these magical systems work that you can operate with them directly. And I'm pretty sure Tesla was one such wizard.
Right, and it's that back in the day, a lot of technology and advanced science was suppressed and hidden, so it's like they used that and called it magic, while simultaneously, when you get into the super advanced sides of this and the metaphysical sides, there is the potential that there's legitimate, like godlike technology that who knows, like what real magic possibilities could be accessed and interacted with, experienced, if it is on that level, like if you're connecting with this creative consciousness and power of God, technology and systems, right?
Right, and I don't want my use of the word magic here to be misinterpreted with magical thinking, which is the type of thinking where you understand cause and effect behind certain practices, but don't actually understand how either one specifically works or where it comes from. So it's like having the cliff notes of something without really being able to read the source material. And that doesn't really get us very far, but that's the way that magic has been portrayed mostly through society and culture as something that can't really be understood or comprehended. And I fundamentally disagree with that. For me, I call something magic when it is beyond the logical approach to access or beyond the scientific approach to access, but well within the paralogical approach. And the paralogical approach is sort of like an orthogonal way of applying logic where it doesn't make immediate sense in the sequential cause equals effect, go on. More so, this talks about the interrelationship between the two, and in the paralogical approach, you can swap effect and cause through other systems, to understand something like, 5-dimensional time space or more. And they're not intuitive, but you can reach them with your mind as long as you have the connections and their baseline relationships already in your head when you're thinking about them.
I think another point I like to add to that too is, the ancients back in those days, what we look at this and what we're seeing with the pyramids and how they were developed and how they were used as a generator. And now we've got even more evidence to prove that theory correct, that even the terminology we use today, like technology, back in those days, they didn't have that in their vocabulary, right? Or
Right.
to see something that we would have an explanation for as something as technology, where they would see it back in their day to actually describe what they're seeing. To them, it's magic or godlike. So,
Right. I mean, let's take a look at a piece of basic technology that none of us would really consider or think of calling technology. Let's take a look at the megaphone. Not the amplified kind, just simply a cone shape. You yell into one side of it in the small side, and then because your lungs can only displace so much air and the air density is low, you can only produce so much sound, roughly about 130 decibels. But if you use a megaphone, that same compression in your lungs will allow them to perform more work on the air. It will consume more calories, therefore, but you can produce significantly more than 130 decibels. Now, the megaphone is nothing but a solid hollow structure with an opening on both ends. It doesn't have any complex technological aspects to it, but it is a form of technology. We just wouldn't think of it as one, just as every other musical instrument is, from drums to trumpets to the piano. All forms of technology, none of which are thought of as technology. So it's just that kind of aspect of some things that we would call magic, or we would call music, or we would call other things, can be known by many different concepts by other cultures throughout time. Sorry, that probably sounded like a bit of word salad.
Yeah, we're kind of going pretty broad on this, but yeah, I agree.
It's also very quiet in the room, so
yeah, it's I'm still trying to absorb what I'm looking at here of what how this pyramid worked. I think there was a very large.
My apologies, my computer.
Yeah, you're kind of fading out, BurnEye, quite a bit.
Yeah, it seems like this stream may not have been meant to happen.
Yeah, it's kind of.
Yeah, we could be under attack.
Oh,
Who knows?
Here.
But yeah, what I was saying is, because this is huge. This is huge news. Like if Tess were alive today, he'd be like, "Yeah, see, I told you,
Yeah, he would. But is it really huge news? One of the most surprising parts about this announcement to me was how many people were surprised by it.
I wasn't when I saw it. It was like
by the dimensions of it. It's just 600 meters under the ground.
Just to kind of give a perspective on the size, the depth is 1.5 times the size of the Empire State Building. So I've been to the Empire State Building.
Try building something like that under the ground. I don't think that.
Yeah, picture that under the ground, but 8 of them. Okay.
That thing might have been built above ground. It's just too big, man.
Nobody will know how it was built, and I don't believe, the Egyptian theory that they used ropes and levers and all this stuff. No, I'm not buying it. I'm not buying that for a second. There is no way a human could have built that structure that many years ago. It's impossible. There's no logical explanation how that was built.
Well, hold up. It goes down 600 meters, so that's many years ago. It's way more many years ago than 5,000 or 10,000.
Yeah, it was an entirely different situation.
Absolutely, Mike. I fully agree on that. That this was the master builder, whatever they were, civilization, whether it was giants like this, the cedar race demigods, or humans in a past, previous, advanced civilization state. That whatever the original pyramid building, macro mountains pyramid technology, and they were also the geopolymer builders, as the megalith builders, as well as the polygonal megalith walls that were mostly made out of this geopolymer material, and that it had to do with the resonance and getting things in harmonic resonance for one, and then plasma technology too. And that last year the Chinese came out with their new satellites saying with imaging of these plasma clouds directly above the Giza pyramids, and that this had to be this plasma style technology. And as for Jeremiah saying, is like, right, who's surprised? It's like, I wasn't surprised at all. In fact, this kind of confirms also Samir Zvanovich's work with the Bosnian pyramids, and him documenting this different type of beams energy beams coming out of the Bosnian pyramids, and that they were more of like these acoustic energy compared to light energy systems, and that it was this past, like in the tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions, who knows, but it was long, many cataclysms most likely ago, and that the smaller little mound pyramids that are around the world that actually have like burials in them and aren't made out of hewn stone and geopolymer, just like earth and stuff, that this would have been the next like survivor civilization trying to mimic whatever the original pyramids that were still functioning, sort of thing.
Right. You could say the same thing for the pyramids on the Giza Plateau, primarily because we have fairly decent analytical evidence showing structural damage to at least the Great Pyramid on that plateau, which seems to indicate that it survived at least one cataclysm. So we have no idea how old it is exactly, but we can be fairly confident in stating that it's at least, at minimum, 12,000 years or older, potentially in excess of 22,000 years or older. So,
right, and so
however much sand can come over a city in those areas in a year. Let's say it's 100 meters. I don't think so.
Yeah, I'm not.
So, Mike, the thing about that is it was most likely the sand was the flooding from a catastrophic like tsunami event. Like that's why the Sahara is now barren and dead, and there's lots of salt pits everywhere. Is that it was the ocean like tsunami that came, wiped everything out, left the mud, the silt, the sand, and then left the ground itself like poisoned with salt, turning it into this desert. And why all the ancient human maps of pre-cataclysm show these cities, these riverways and whatnot within northern Africa and not a desert, is that
to address Mike's point, I fundamentally disagree with the very notion that this was ever an above ground or designed to be an above ground structure. If you look at the scans that were done, you'll notice that the columns don't extend all the way up to the base of the pyramid, even though the spirals seem to. And that would seem to me, at least, clearly an indication that the pyramid was not built upon some platform that lay on top of these columns, freely suspended above the ground, but the entire thing was designed from the beginning and consequently executed as being a buried structure that was supposed to act at the base of the pyramid for a specific purpose, meaning that the pyramid was always supposed to be above ground where it is now, and this structure was always supposed to be beneath ground where it is now, and that it was built that way. Not that it happened that way to be buried by some cataclysm, which I think is an absurd notion to have over a kilometer of sand come in and fill that space just randomly.
Yeah, in my personal opinion, and I would actually put money on this, that the Egyptians inherited the pyramids. The
Well, there's
pyramids were
100%
there.
chance of
You
that
guys,
because
you
Egypt
guys
hasn't
don't have
existed for that long.
familiarity with,
chemists.
you know what maintenance is? Like, you ever do maintenance? Try doing maintenance on something that's buried. So they
Yeah.
have tunnels down there, right?
Absolutely.
Let's do a little think tank on this, you know?
Yeah, Mike, I'm not going to get into that. I'm sorry, but I have better things to do than
Well,
waste
so
time.
I agree with the both of you, though. It's that the above stuff was buried
I mean,
by
those
this
tunnels must be for
cataclysm, but
maintenance.
It
yeah,
doesn't matter, Mike.
there's so
Your
many.
opinion is not wanted here. Thank you.
No, I think Mike's right on that, though. Like that, there are these maintenance stuff, and that once once the original cataclysm happened, there was no longer maintenance on any of that stuff. And when it comes into the maintenance aspect, that's where we can really see that the Egyptian, like dynastical civilizations of after cataclysm, were these inheritors, because the maintenance that they did was like reclaiming, trying to like get some things up looking again. Then they're the ones that were actually like carving their languages into it and reshaping stuff, but at the same
Well, it
time,
depends what the experts say on those tunnels. You know, we have to wait for them. So
we're never going to hear anything from any experts on any tunnels except
yeah,
that
well,
they don't
rest assured,
exist.
none of us here are experts, that's for sure. So we're just speculating, you know.
Yes, but from doing actual research and watching the different videos over the years of
We're not
all the
expert on
people
this
that have
particular topic here. We're just
snuck
speculating.
in, there's actually a crazy amount of videos of the different tunnels out there where you see people bribing the different security guards, getting access to restricted areas, getting through the cages, and like there's a complete network. And people say underground city, but it's not an underground city. It would have been the inner workings of this machinery, and like you're saying, both maintenance shafts and access, as well as the actual plumbing and the system of whatever it was, how it was operating, and the functions of it, right? That's what makes sense to me.
All right, I'm no archaeologist, and I won't claim to be an expert on ancient culture or anything like that, but I can at least state that I have a significant amount of expertise in grounding systems and large-scale electrical power distribution. So for me, that stuff plugs right in, and it seems fairly obvious for what purpose it was likely used for.
Right. So one thing I wanted to
That's
do
an expensive ground, though. I mean, geez.
I would say the most impressive ground anybody's ever conceived of.
Well, maybe if it is, so if it's a grounding system, then speculate why build such a huge grounding system.
Because they are pulling energy out of the ground, like utilizing the telluric currents, these ground energies of Earth, the ones that we don't currently really understand or use, and they were harnessing it and applying it on the largest possible scale.
You know, Anthony in the chat said they look familiar to earthquake things they put on buildings to just, you know, help with earthquakes. And the pyramid did survive all these earthquakes.
Yeah, how the earthquake.
But I'm not saying those tubes are just there for the for preventing earthquake damage.
No.
but,
The earthquaking
definitely must
proof
have played a role in that
technology
too.
and engineering aspect, Mike, is well proven in the polygonal structure masonry of the blocks, where each one is a little bit different and
Nice if we had
interlocks with
soil
all the
samples.
other ones. And from that, it's able to absorb the waves that come through of the energy and disperse it. And that's why all these ancient pre-cataclysm macro like the walls that still exist around the world, whether it's Peru, whether it's the Mediterranean, whether it's the different pyramids, the polygonal ones survive earthquakes and are earthquake proof from that specific designing feature. Well known, but kind of suppressed. And why we don't build like that today, we're missing out, right? Like, anywho, if my internet bandwidth will allow it, I'd like to play a couple segments of very relevant information on this. The first interview here on Funny Old World channel, and she's interviewing an archaeologist that I guess actually is working in parallel with the Italian team that actually released this and did this. So he's actually kind of like verifying the authenticity of it all, which there's a really good segment here too.
Looks like they're connected, the pyramid and the tubes.
Absolutely.
I like.
How about that?
I found your Facebook post, which had the abstract from the press
Sound
release,
working?
but I think people are getting a bit confused because they're looking for the press release.
Yeah, audio's coming through good and everything.
Am I correct? That is the abstract kind of is the press release.
Yeah, it's the abstract describing basically what they're going to cover in the conference that just happened this past weekend in Italy.
Mhm.
And so this is Corrado Malongo, Filippo Biondi, and Armando May are all doing this project. And they're friends of mine. I've been talking with them since last year about trying to help get this discovery out. They told me last year, get ready, Trevor, because March 15th, the world's going to see. So I've been preparing for this day. But what actually happened on the day was...
Okay, so right there, that's very relevant information. Why it's trending everywhere now, even though the original paper was published in 2022, is they just did this conference on March 15th that has gotten all the media attention now. So that's a good point of knowledge.
Was very surprising to me. And it turns out that I ended up being the source for this entire document coming out. It was actually like they sent me this document by email on Saturday morning, and so I woke up and saw it, and I said, "Okay, wow!" I was the first person to read it, and I imagined that this was being given to every one of the 900 plus attendees at the conference,
Yeah.
who would all be sharing it that day. So I asked Armando May, I said, "Can I share this?" And he said, "Go for it." And I put it out figuring 900 other people would also, but as it turned out, I was the only one. I put it on Facebook. There wasn't any official webpage of theirs that it was released on.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are looking for the source, and it's really just my Facebook page. So I want to explain how that came about a little bit and give people an idea that this is not made up. It's not a hoax. It's not fake. We are going to get complete confirmation of everything we're seeing in these images within the week, at least. Armando told me last night within 10 days, but I think that's it should be less than that.
Yeah.
Interesting right there as well. So saying that the actual team is going to publish the raw data of their scans now for the first time within 10 days or a week or so from now. So I really look forward to seeing that.
No, what I like to see the reaction from the Egyptians. Historical.
Exactly, that's my point. That's my whole point. Like the shitstorm, pardon my language, but that is going, like, that's opening Pandora's box. Like actually publishing these real scans that can be scrutinized. Like, oh yeah. Jeremiah, were you going to say something?
yeah,
I understand
was
it's a
thinking, I've
Doppler
always found
scan
it
of
kind of
some kind.
ridiculous how the Egyptian Authority has historically blocked anybody from deeply investigating into these topics. And the question I've had in the back of my mind rolling around is probably one that a lot of other people have. What's the purpose in trying to quote unquote cover this up, or why create a conspiracy out of, free, open archaeological information? And so there are sort of two reasons that I speculate come to mind on this one. And the first one is a matter of pride, that the present installed Egyptian authority has no idea what these structures were used for or why they are there, because they were already there when Kemet
They got
became
there.
Egypt. And, it used to be Kemet, and we don't know what it was called before then. So perhaps it's a matter of pride and embarrassment combined, where they feel they should be the authorities because that's their title, but they have no authority or understanding of this. So there's that contention. And then the second reason is perhaps they do know, or somebody within officialdom knows exactly what these things are, or close enough to it, and wanted to keep that stuff locked down so either they could never
It's
have it
political.
released, or so that they could personally release it and get the glory.
It's political.
Well, and most likely, yes, political, but that it's from the highest
It's not that complicated. It's just political.
elite establishment that none of this can come out because it rewrites history in the mainstream,
Like
and they
politics is
just
not
cannot
complicated.
let that happen, right? Like, it's a complete reset of humanity's mindset on where we come from and the world's past. If something as major as this gets announced, right? It's like, and
Yeah. What I
So-
would be doing if I were those scientists with that scanner, I'd be heading off to Serbia and scan that landscape. I'd be heading to the one in Peru.
Yeah,
That
Right,
pyramid there.
exactly. Because if they found that on the Giza Plateau,
good.
And-
what are all these other
and-
ancient structures that nobody is actually
Right.
restricting us from doing scans of? There is
Right,
absolutely
exactly.
that
And
possibility.
now here's my point. If the same kind of structures are underneath those other pyramids, the one in Peru and the one in Serbia,
In
guess
Mexico,
what? Guess what? In Mexico, guess
China?
what? You got connections. That means whoever built those things had access to travel the entire planet.
Well, and build the entire planet. It was one civilization, right? Like a mega
Or
civilization.
many civilizations that had transportation.
Yeah,
That they were able to go around the planet and build these megalithic structures. So that blows a whole new lid off of history right there. Like a shitstorm to the highest order.
They're going to have to get under those tunnels before they know everything. That's the bottom line.
Yeah. Well,
Literally,
now
the
that they
bottom
know
line.
and can map them, they can actually access them, right?
No, they got to go in those tunnels, dude.
Yeah,
There's stuff going
I
on.
don't necessarily agree with that from
Anyways,
this perspective.
back
I mean,
to
think
the
about
video.
an X-ray.
Hold on.
You can't say that. We have no
Well,
idea.
you don't even
what
know
your
how
phone is
those
doing.
coils are connected and stuff.
Yeah,
if they're
so there's a
even
lot of
coiled, I don't know.
investigation that needs to be done for sure. But let's hear what there is and what's to come, apparently, because this guy saying that they're releasing the actual scans within a week.
It will be a complete 4-hour video presentation of the entire conference, complete technical details. Everything everyone wants is coming very soon.
So a question: the conference itself, is it? It's not
Nice.
4 hours all about this Khafre pyramid project, or is that just part of one of the aspects of the?
That is part of it.
Okay.
They have told me that they're going to scan this entire thing and they're going to map this entire thing. I mean, the whole plateau. And it's going to take the next year for them to get all of this stuff 2 kilometers down.
Boom, right there. That's why they're yet to do the other pyramids, because they are currently starting the project of mapping the entire Giza Plateau. And I just quickly got to show, and thank you, Esoteric Gold, for the link, and rest in peace to the eternal soul of Carmen Bolter, an Egyptologist out of my hometown of Calgary. And here in this video from 9 years ago on her channel, she's released the scans that they did of the Labyrinth complex, which is also very legendary and semi-well known. They're from ancient Greek records of it. And well, the suppressed real Egyptologists, archaeologists that have been working out there, like Carmen Bolter did in her lifetime, and that there is this scan here showing these 2 layers of massive, massive structures. And this is where the stories, legends, and rumors of the underground city that exists under there are. So if this technology as their claim works as they're claiming here, and they actually publish the original scans, and that they're now working on the entire Giza plateau, that it will confirm both these original scans published by Carmen Bolter a decade ago, as well as being confirming a way too big. It opens Pandora's box, and humanity, like the original Western religions, essentially their creation story myths are all kind of destroyed overnight, because it's not just rewriting official history. It kind of confirms a history that the prophets of the past have no recollection or knowledge of, which, it's quite something else.
Maybe
Right.
the history goes way further back than what we previously thought. Maybe these structures are way more ancient than what we were led to believe.
Right, essentially confirms the whole Atlantis and like the Graham Hancock thesis, essentially, right? This pre-cataclysm, or the cataclysm of the Younger Dryas era, and the time frame of Atlantis, the Sumerian kings lists, and all the rest, right? But
well, I heard some theories out there that there were 6 major cataclysms that happened in our history, and we only know about 1. So, there's other cataclysms that's happened that have wiped everything out, and the only visible structure that we know of this past is these megalithic structures like the pyramids, and that's the only trace that's left. Nothing else. Everything's been wiped out, clean, right? Whether it was a cosmic event that happened, a meteor, whatever, asteroid, that could have wiped everything out, and we wouldn't know that this society actually existed, because there's nothing left, or it's buried.
Well, it's buried, but it's also kind of hidden in plain sight. And the aspect that, like, once the geopolymer stuff comes out with the megaliths, and that, well, how much is buried, but how much is actually literally everywhere, and that when you really see it with new eyes, it's kind of crazy. But that's kind of getting off tangent, and a story or an episode for another day. I'll get back to playing this crucial information of Trevor Grassi, who's connected to the project here.
They're going to be working on all of that. They're focusing on the Copper Pyramid first, G2, the middle pyramid. That's the pyramid we're seeing all this under, which, by the way, is not the Great Pyramid. Some people might confuse. But,
it's the middle one.
And they have said before already that all 3 of the pyramids have connections down to these deeper levels, but they've only showed the middle one so far. And there's been some confusion as well about, is this part of the paper they released in 2022 that was about the Great Pyramid, or is it completely separate? It's completely separate. What we have is this short abstract. They give us the few images everyone's been sharing and a little bit of text, but they're promising to go a lot deeper on it, probably mostly about the Copper Pyramid, I'm imagining, but they're going to probably put some other stuff in there. I've heard some aspects of what they're doing of the whole plateau. They're looking at a lot of things that I personally.
Okay, so here, this looks like some of the actual radar scans showing the 8 cylindrical structures. So that's very interesting. And
Yep. Just I want everybody to kind of think of the scale of these. Okay, 640 meters. That's 1.5 miles down. Okay, so if you've been to New York City, and I've been to the Empire State Building, these things are 1.5 times the height of the Empire State Building. I went right to the top of the Empire State Building, so I know how big it is, and they're ginormous. Now, I'm sorry, even with today's technology, we could not pull off an engineering feat.
drilling down, building down, potentially, yes, but like it would take literally
Thousands of years to make that.
going into it.
Either they had to have some kind of tech that would assist them on building a structure of that magnitude.
Yeah, no doubt the drilling down aspect, right? Like
Yeah, exactly.
the hollowing out. Yeah,
And-
that's
and-
freaking
And you're going to do that with shovels? No, that ain't going to happen.
oh,
They
definitely.
had some very amazing technology to build structures like that. Well, not alone build a structure above the ground, try pulling that off below the ground. You have to go through all the sediment and rocks and all
Yeah,
that stuff.
we're getting into the
Right.
technological
Yeah.
aspect of terraforming level advancement.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
Yeah. And so this is interesting. This guy actually publishing here showing some what looks like the actual scans, right? Like, well, let's see what else he got.
Been very interested in recently. Yeah, sorry, there's a message up here.
That's okay.
Yeah, they're going to, I don't know exactly what they'll cover, but it's probably going to be a lot of the information. It's mostly going to be covering the skeptics coming at the process, because the synthetic aperture radar Doppler tomography technique and method is very new. So it's going to have a lot of technical, concerns coming at it, which Filippo Biondi is going to be just tearing through. He's not going to have any problem defending.
Do you know if the SAR technology has been used and verified anywhere, or is it at the moment? Is it just Filippo?
Yeah, it's a technology that has been used in other fields before, looking at volcanoes, for instance, or earth science stuff.
Right.
Filippo is the one who has adapted it to archaeology, and it's a satellite-based technology, so they didn't need any on-site access, which is an important point because they did not get ministry permission. This is an independent project, and it's not official by any means.
All right, so we have what appears to be another scan here.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot more scans coming out.
And then what's this underground? Is that another one? Right, very interesting stuff. So it's like they're actually starting to release some of the real data regardless, but
I'm sure there's more.
Oh,
of course there's more. And he stated there that they're releasing a lot more within 10 days, apparently.
Yeah.
So Filippo created a new type of software, basically capable of interpreting this data that's being given out by the company that provides this. They give out that satellite data of the SAR signals. And Filippo developed this software basically to be able to interpret it in order to use it on these sites. And the big difference, it's basically a radar radio signal beam being sent out and received, and it's looking from multiple angles at the ground. Sorry. So you can actually put together these three-dimensional models. Yeah, well, it's basically it's a beam sent in a radio signal, and then it's
Okay, so these renderings, I guess, come from the original source at least. So that's good to know that they're not just made up by some random AI or influencer using AI. I guess let's continue on. It's either one heck of a huge scam or the most legitimate scan of the plateau so far.
it's measured back. They get a reading back, and they're able to basically from multiple angles. It does this pass kind of, and you can get the basic image of a 3D form showing where there's pockets of lesser density, or chambers, or caves, or anomalies, basically. So the readings come out to be something similar to like GPR scans. The big difference is that, for instance, the Scan Pyramids project that was working on the Great Pyramid as well, they had to use, when you're detecting muons or cosmic particles coming down from space, and you have to put these sensor plates in, for instance, in the subterranean chamber or the Grand Gallery, if you want to sense the spaces in between that and space, the sky. With this new method, you don't need that. So you can actually scan way deep down to a place you haven't already gotten down to put the plates, you know. So this is 100% no on-site access needed, no permits needed, no media censorship needed. They're completely independent team doing this without even having to set foot in Giza.
Pause
And
it there.
peer-reviewed paper,
Because that's a
because
really
obviously
important point. Yeah, basically
Yes,
what
it
you're saying
is.
is we didn't have to have the we didn't have to have permission from the Egyptian authorities because
Yeah, how
this is so non-invasive.
Hawass could not give it his BS wash and stop us. We reached it from a satellite above, essentially.
Yeah, good luck stopping us from investigating anything else now.
Right? And that they're doing the whole plateau. That's very intriguing. We will know if it's legit if they magically have heart attacks and car accidents. I'm praying for these people.
Yeah.
Luckily, I don't think that the powers
they're
that ought not be in that particular situation have access to such technologies. So I don't think they really have a whole lot to worry about other than maybe a lot of hurt feelings and, backlash from that, but probably not the rest of their lives.
Right? Very interesting times. All right, we'll play a little bit more of this one here and see what else this guy's got to say.
They put one out in 2022, and so people are going. Do they have like, or do you know when the paper for this is going to be coming out? There is going to be a paper, because obviously people sometimes people just need a paper. They will not look at it unless there's a paper. I'm
at least like 95% sure there will be a full written report as well. It'll probably come out soon with the conference. They're working on translating it all because they want to have it all in English for this premiere.
Yeah.
So, but what you asked before is a really good question. Has it been proven? The proof of the method is the most important thing here. That's if they can show that they can scan a chamber we already know of and show that they can accurately describe its shape with that imagery, then we know that the method works. And
that's a very crucial point this guy's talking about. So he's laying it out, and I guess only time is going to tell if they actually do, right? So
they did do that in their 22 paper. And so this is the reason why I'm very have a lot of faith that they're going to do it again this time. Be completely thorough, give the proof of the method, show that the technology works by showing us something we already know, or they could do it to the Osiris shaft or something like that.
Yes, that would be good, because we know accurately the Osiris shaft. So because does the 2022 paper, it shows the void, which they also verified from the separate pyramid scan project. So they both found voids in like the same.
You can see the Scan Pyramids project has been working there since like 2016, and they, in all that time, with their muon scanning, thermal imaging, all the techniques they were using, they only really showed us a couple hazy zones that likely had voids. The one above the Grand Gallery and the North Face corridor, which they've since showed endoscope camera footage of. But besides that, they didn't really show much of anything. You know, when Biondi and Malanga went in there, they showed 20 new structures that the world had been detected in any sense before. And it kind of, the ministry has still not commented on that, but that paper is very well done. I would say it really holds up. They show you the scans, they show how the models were built from the scans. And it's the most incredible discovery in Egypt, and as long as I've been alive, probably. And that was in 2022, just the Great Pyramid. Now they're doing that to the whole plateau.
Well,
so we can expect they will do controls and test proof of the method here too.
I think that would be the real smoking gun mic drop. If you can prove, if he can do a little demonstration and prove that he can scan something already there, like the Osiris shaft or something, that and go, look, this is what the, because a lot of people are skeptical because, you know, the 3D imaging, it's almost unbelievable how you know, detailed with the pillars and the spiraled sort of cylindrical pillars. If they can, if he can prove he can do that on another site that we already know exactly looks like that, then that's kind of a home run. So I'm really excited. This is
just like what you were saying, Bernie.
I'm like you. I wanted to.
And essentially, they already have. Yeah.
Okay, great.
I mean, they did. It is the same method they used in 2022, but they should do a proof of method on the copper pyramid itself to make it specifically to this structure. It could be different type of stone, interior. We don't know. You know, that would be the right way to do it, and I'm pretty sure they will. And I know that there will be a lot of questions coming to Filippo, but I know he's got this. He's been preparing for this day, and I'll tell you, it's not just Giza. This technology is going to revolutionize archaeology. When we saw LiDAR come out, they found like 200 cities in northern Guatemala and Mexico in like a weekend. This is going to be, you don't even need airplanes. This will allow anyone in the world to actually sense underground cities across the planet. And I know of at least 5 or 6 in Egypt alone, underground cities that are interconnected with tunnels.
I've been saying that. I've been saying the minute we can see under the Sahara, the whole.
All right, I had to pause it there because those are some huge points that they're putting out and huge claims, and that is truly the relevance of all of this. And that, number one, we need to see the proof of concept of them actually releasing all their data and the method of it. I'm just going to drop that video for a sec and put back up.
Yeah, Bernie, before you do that, I gotta take off for the night. It's 1 o'clock in the morning, my time. But I'll leave on this note too. Nathan Stubblefield was creating all these Earth batteries. So the ground network and the pyramids and what Stubblefield was working on, he understood it. Tesla understood it. So it gives more credence to the idea that, you know, obviously we're looking at a generator of some kind. So I'll leave that on that note.
Absolutely.
I guess I'll comment one thing on the Stubblefield system. Yeah, what he had done is aligned these long ground parallel conductors that were magnetic under the ground along the A field vector so that he could pick up the differential in the E field vector potential.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But just, you know, food for thought, right?
100%.
I think you nailed it with that one.
Yeah. Anyways, guys, I'm beat. It's like 1:10 in the morning.
Have a good night, man.
I'm beat.
111 right there, right now, isn't it?
It was 1:02 a.m. Yeah.
Just switched. Thanks, Mike, for joining us, brother. Always a pleasure, and for your thoughts on this. And we'll see you next Friday.
Yeah. Sounds good, guys. Take care. And chat, thanks a lot.
Appreciate you. And Aaron, I see your comments there. I've got the original paper. I haven't had the chance to read it all yet. I have heard like all the usual debunkers that like hate on new discoveries or like archaeological paradigm breakthrough sort of stuff naturally were like instantly trying to debunk this. And one of their major arguments, essentially, it's like the CIA points of that I've heard, and I have yet to take a look into myself, which I will be doing, is that the original paper uses a bunch of bunk stuff in the conclusion. But so far, in my just initial look into it, one thing that needs to be accounted for is the actual original paper is written in Italian, and so far there's just like this English copy that I guess is where that weird conclusion's coming from. So I have to wonder and speculate, is that intentional? Is it's just a mistranslation? Or are they, did someone intentionally bug up the conclusion to make it look bunk? I don't know. I'm gonna have to read the paper myself, and then I'm gonna have to get the original Italian one and try and do, I guess, use different softwares to
Yeah,
compare.
and in this particular case, we have to give the skeptics in our audience a huge amount of credit because they are calling out the very obvious points. Most of this data does not offer anywhere near the resolution. So I know that the videos and the media that has been coming out claim that they're extremely high resolution scans. Well,
Oh, did they? Interesting.
in that I would disagree. There's a lot of other data in those scans that has to be algorithmically interpreted, but I don't think the resolution that we have right now, or that was used to compile those renderings, is sufficient to make the claims that are being made of the exact geometric structure, size, or density of those renderings. Like, for example, the spirals around those columns. Well, first off, we don't even know if they're actually columns. They could be cones. They could be other shapes. They might not be completely even. They could be naturally occurring volcanic or magma columns or something else like that, which may have been an inspiration for using that site. But the truth is that we really don't have enough information at this point to say concretely this is what exists on the Giza Plateau in
Yeah,
those
like
structures, right?
100%. It's like that's the whole purpose of this stream right now. We are scrutinizing all of the different information out there. This
Right.
is a absolutely crazy claim. We're not saying like it's definitively true or anything of the sorts. We are saying that it does resonate with what ourselves like have suspected, and that it seriously needs to be investigated. But the group that has put this out seriously needs to put out the rest of it, the real evidence. And like was just discussed and being discussed in the video we're watching here in this interview, that the team needs to first off do a proof of concept demonstration where they use the same method on something that's already well known, like the insides of the pyramids.
Well, I think that we're actually going to find far better information or data by not looking at that same site, but instead
like
looking
just
at other
a well-known
sites,
site sort of thing, right? And you're absolutely right. It should be a different one that they can find.
Let's assume that the resolution isn't high enough at all with the current state of that technology to ever give us excellent renderings like those which have been presented as a high likelihood probability, which I'm not going to say that they're a high likelihood probability. I'm going to say they are a probability well above the 50%, right? But we don't exactly know the nature of those things. But if we find similar structures or information, even if it's low resolution information around other large pyramids across the globe, then obviously there's clearly either a natural thing that was the inspiration for using these sites, or there's some kind of very advanced technological purpose for it. But it won't be until we actually have more scan data from different sites that I think we can start to draw those kind of conclusions. And we should remain vigilant in our skepticism, at least to the extent that our brains don't fall out.
100%. And what I really do like about what the guy just claimed there about how that team is supposedly doing a full scan of the Giza Plateau itself is that the reason they'd be doing that, one, why I believe that that's like circumstantial evidence leaning towards them being legitimate is that if you've looked into the anomalies of the Giza Plateau, there's the rumored macro underground labyrinth of ancient Egypt, and that would be something that they would be able to find undeniable evidence of, or confirm the other scans of it that have been done by the likes of the team of Carmen Bolter, which I'm gonna switch over and play a clip of that now instead, as this could be something that the two are of the same original structure's purpose and building, or something completely different. Regardless, that the team, if legitimate on this discovery just published, and if they're actually scanning the Giza Plateau with this new method and technology, should theoretically be publishing more evidence of this.
Well, right,
right
and
here.
especially for the especially for the engineering and technical minded people like myself who want to actually comprehend completely the methodology being used in these scans, that's going to be obviously huge, because CERN had to do the same thing, and they were heavily scrutinized for every single claim they've ever made about a new discovery, which they should be as a scientific organization that's publicly funded, or mostly publicly funded. But like that, that's simply the chain of custody and responsibility of the people who had invested in that project. But this should be no different, really. Like, all the information has to be freely and openly available to be analyzed by people who probably know more about that stuff than the team themselves who created that technology.
Exactly. All right, so this is another technology. Apparently, it's from the team of Klaus Donna that's connected with Kelsey Bolt or Carmen Bolter that did this scan, and that's the team that did the scans on the Bosnian pyramid complex.
Pyramid. And so in February 2012, I led an expedition into the open desert, again, looking for this place. Like, I've got the sense, in the past life memory, that there's something that has this huge space that's very, very deep and very, very old. And so we went in with a Russian scientist, Dr. Konstantin Korokov, a crew from New York, a film crew, and a hot air balloon, and found the place. And we had to fly in there. It was a military zone with unexploded landmines. Couldn't have been more dangerous. I mean, this was a real adventure. And then we got there, landed badly because it was late, bumped around on the desert, and then went walking to this place and went, oh, it's falling apart. It's modern. And they had literally built a concrete pyramid, and the Air Force was using it as a target for their pilots that were practicing. So we measured the energy fields on the Earth, and they were all wiggly still, even though it's, could have been many years since they'd used it. And so that was just to say that was a dud, and that was 3 years ago. So, okay, that's not it. Giza's not it. I wonder where this place is. And so somebody sent me a link, and I had seen it before. This thing is the image that is known for the labyrinth. And if you look at the center of it, and it's the legend is it's all at once a labyrinth, a brain, and a pyramid. And so it's my conviction that these are multidimensional ideas, signatures, symbols, about biology and cosmology and astronomy and archetypes along the edges here. And it's, it hasn't been deciphered. And this was a copper engraving that was done in 1670. So since 2008, when the ground penetrating radar was done, and I do have an image of that scan as well, that was.
Okay, so here she's got up the image of the ground penetrating radar. And this is the network of tunnels and shafts underneath the area, a certain area of the Giza Plateau. It's a different pyramid that's further off. I believe she'll mention it here in a minute, the area, and that what she was talking about, the interdimensional chip thing, that was a rendering from the 1600s of the supposed Egyptian labyrinth.
It was really low resolution, and it just colored blobs, but they made a big announcement and said that they had discovered it. But we have to understand that there's methodology involved, and if you have a scan, high definition or low definition, it's the hypothesis.
Right.
And we need to go to the field and get the verification. So it was premature for them to say that they...
Right? Boom, right there. Well said. Rest in peace, Carmen Bolcher. But the
I have to agree with her.
The scan is the hypothesis, and then you have to go there and get the confirmation in purposes in person. So currently the issue is the legality of the stone walling, the gatekeeping, the physical stonewalling, the physical gatekeeping of the Egyptian authorities to the real archaeologists trying to get in there. I hope that was a funny double pun. But we'll get back to watching more of Carmen Bolcher here, as she literally, like, it kills me, it pains me hugely. She, Egyptologist at the University of Calgary, Alberta, where I was born and raised, lived my whole life, to this day, broadcasting live from right now. And I didn't get the chance to interview her, but I almost did, but she fell ill, and may she rest in peace. And for those unaware, she's also part of the Pyramid Code Netflix series. Very awesome stuff. And her work as well, very quote unquote controversial with mainstream Egyptology, but she was a actual pioneer in academic Egyptology of putting these ideas and actual boots on the ground research in Egypt on proving and making these discoveries.
They had discovered it. But pretty much now when you investigate, everybody knows there's something down there, except Zahi Hawass. He says there's nothing there.
Well, we're going to prove him wrong. And then you come in and you've got this advanced form of a scan. And if I'm correct, you're working on this with Klaus, and he was basically the connection to getting the ability to do this scan, right?
That's right. But the thing is that because we've been talking for a couple of years, the other contracts that he's gotten that use this scan, they actually go to the country and dig and say, here it is. And so for things like finding water, that doesn't mean that we're going to get the chance to do it. And so that's why I think it's important to really start thinking about what it is.
Before we get into the details of the discovery, Carmen, I just wanted to orient the viewers as to the approximate location that you're speaking about and that you're going to be showing us about. You mentioned before it's south of Cairo, so if everybody's familiar with the Nile Delta leading out to the Mediterranean Sea, Cairo is at the base of that delta. And where is this location relative to the Giza Plateau in Cairo itself?
It's 95 kilometers south, and it's beside the Fayum Oasis.
And
which is right here. I'm showing you on the map right here.
So is that an artificial lake to the northwest?
The Hawara Pyramid, and that on the ancient maps, it's documented that there was this ancient constructed artificial lake and all sorts of stuff. Quite the site, and apparently has an underground labyrinth city.
I guess, of that oasis, or is that...
It's not artificial, and that's actually a good question, because there are ancient maps that show a displacement of water, and it's called Lake Moeris, Moeris, and it's about a 45-minute drive from this pyramid, and we went there, and it's this enormous salt lake in the middle of Egypt.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so that is just mind-boggling in itself, but apparently this is so old that the legends are talking about two pyramids in the lake, but on a little island.
So I've actually covered those two missing pyramids before a couple years ago. Shout out to Ancient Historia. We did several episodes investigating into them, and quite fascinating that that is the site where there's supposedly this massive underground city structures.
And some people think that the water went all the way to Giza. Well, whoa, what about the Nile? And if the Nile was covered, I mean, if you think about the Pyramid Code and time and the geological movement of the river and all that stuff, how old are we talking about here?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of speculation and a lot of unknowns that go with it. But I think that we are speaking because of the depth, and it's 30 kilometers from the Nile, which is, the Sphinx is 8 miles from the Nile. And so, and we've already examined the extreme antiquity of that, through the Pyramid Code. So we are talking old here.
So this was from 9 years ago, so 2014, I guess. DJ Tom Hanks, to answer your question.
Yeah, it's still just as relevant right now today as it was then.
Right? Almost even more relevant.
I would agree with that.
It's almost like that lake there has basically been cut off from an ancient water system that was once connected to a greater ocean. Let's say it's like a landlocked salty sea of one sort or another.
Right, and so research into geology, the geology of the area,
I do have to point out quickly there and posit that a massive salt lake there that dried up. That does kind of add to my hypothesis of the saltwater tsunami and the salt killing and making the desert, but that's a whole other discussion.
Is all important in terms of coming up with some final conclusions about this.
Okay, wonderful.
So what at this point is happening right now? Just sort of a quick little synopsis. Right now, you're in the talks with trying to see if they would allow some kind of excavation or further research, or is there going to be more scans, trying to be done to get more accurate data on this, or where does this stand now?
Well, the final report, will have the details, but there's an instrument that they bring with them that is more accurate than the other things. And so we are proposing to do boreholes into the key rooms that have, I'm putting it out there, there's 6 rooms that apparently have gold. And so we can say X marks the spot and drill the borehole and send a 3D mapping camera in to show the whole thing. And I suppose we could do virtual reality with that.
I love that she always proposed real, actionable, methods of accessing this stuff and confirming it, and real archaeology. We need to continue on her dream and her work. But I'm running out of time, so I'm going to move this ahead a bit. And there's a couple crucial parts I want to play before we have to cut this off in 30 minutes.
And so the step, though, is even though we've got this scan, it could be just like Google Earth, 5 meters off or something. And so there's a device with an antenna, and you walk on the ground, you connect with the scan from before, and you say, here. But the trick is the depth, because none of the other stuff that they did before actually is showing that. And so their scans even say somewhere between 5 and 12 meters. And so this was the most sophisticated technology they had then. 8 years ago is a long time in terms of technology. So newer is better, and older is deeper. Those are our little buzz phrases.
Well, do you want to take people on a little journey? I know you have a bit of a 3D, you got the 3D mapping there. We can show them just so they can get a visual concept of how big this is.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm looking for the blue scan right here. Nope, that's the blue-red. Well, there you go. There's the elevations, and somebody must have known that the rooms follow parallel to an existing.
Well, do you want to take people on a little journey? I know you have a bit of a 3D, you got the 3D mapping there. We can show them just so they can get a visual concept of how big this is.
From their scan.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm looking for the blue scan right here. Nope, that's the blue-red. Well, there you go. There's the elevations, and somebody must have known.
So that is wild. That's like 100 kilometers or so, I guess. Like, because there's the Nile, or she said 30 kilometers away from the Nile, I believe, and the Giza, and there's two layers. The red is above, or the red's below, the blue above, I believe. Anyways, I'll let her explain more.
Yeah, and of course, I'll also say what probably a lot of other people looking at that scan right now are thinking, which is, well, there doesn't seem to be any columns down there.
Right? Yeah, exactly. So that's why we're comparing everything, scrutinizing it, and seeing what's out there, and what's to come.
That the rooms follow parallel to an existing canal that's there, and these chambers are really big. So I guess I can just show you this little animation here that's showing that the levels don't connect. So it's completely separate, two levels with no snakes and ladders connections between them. So what a lot of people think is it's going to be like a tomb where you go up and down in between the two levels. And so in my mind, this suggests that it's different constructions.
And this is a reoccurring theme in Egypt, is different stages of the civilization building on top of more ancient structures in order to provide a place marker, or just to guide people to the sacredness of that site. Do you think that this is something that's happening with this site here in Hawar?
Well, I don't think it's a temple. My dog is barking.
That's okay.
Should I go save her?
She's a welcome guest on this show. You know that, Carmen.
Right. You have to. She's going to keep barking unless I go get her.
She's got the.
And so, in some ways, this is incredibly threatening to consider that we may have some kind of record of the really, really old stuff. And I really don't think that it was on the surface at some point and then it got buried.
Yeah.
I think that it was designed to be underground. But if you look at the construction, it's not the same old. It's not a temple with connecting rooms. Like all the temples, there's an entrance, there's a hypostyle hall, you go through, it's replicating the cavities of the body, and you go all the way through to the pineal gland and the Holy of Holies. And in the cosmology and the tradition ideology in Egypt, it was only the highest level initiates that would go further along. And the first level was for, the populace, I suppose. But, it's not the same thing as that. And also, the three areas of the construction are different from one another.
Yeah. Now, would you just to explore this a little bit further, Carmen? So there's the red level, which is the deepest, the blue level, which is on top of the red level, but below the actual ground level, as we see it today. And then on top of that, there is an actual pyramidal structure. And I guess that would be Old Kingdom, New Kingdom, Egypt. Is there a date for that pyramid?
All right, pause it there for a couple crucial points in the aspect that this was ground penetrating radar, I believe, that was used for these mappings. This was recorded in 2015, and I guess they did the scans in 2012 potentially, or something, maybe 2014. Not entirely sure, but that they found 3 levels of underground structures and systems beneath the pyramids and the Sahara there under the Giza Plateau. It's a different type of technology versus the brand new discovery claims of the Italian group or whatever, with the massive cylinders going under the Giza pyramids. This rather is supposedly the lost labyrinth of the ancient Egyptians, which had been documented by several of the ancient Greeks that had gone over to Egypt in, I guess, the end of the Egyptian civilization, that we're still speaking of it with the mystery schools and, I guess, pharaoh system and whatnot. Anywho, key points that she's pointing out is that they never connect the 2 different underground layers and systems. So it's the potential of different civilizations building on top of each other, or that it could be, for engineering purposes of the inner workings of this mega structure, if it is such a thing, if the new Italian supposed discoveries and radar or deep, ridiculously deep structural cavity renderings, whatever the heck it is, type of Doppler, I guess. We'll do a full second episode deep into the claims of this Italian team, a follow-up to see if they actually release the rest of this data like the guy was supposedly claiming.
Yep, they've got 3 days left to do it.
Right? So, exactly. Although I believe that recording we were watching was actually made earlier today.
No, I mean the one that you showed earlier when he said the stuff was released on the 15th, right?
Yeah, so the
22nd. So they've got 3 days because he said it was going to take up to 10 days.
Yes, but that recording we watched of him saying that, he said that he had just talked to them as in like after that conference, and that they had just told him like yesterday or today or something that they were going to do it
okay, never
week.
mind then.
Yes.
How many days do we have then?
Yeah, exactly. So we got about a week. So in 1 week's time, in this week, I will have the time to finally read the paper of the original publishing of their claims. I'm going to re-watch the full stream of the Carmen Bolter Labyrinth that we're watching right now, as well as looking into the actual, rest of the imaging and releases by the Italian team and whatnot, and finding out the official source information and any additional information they put out, as well as accurately compiling all of their claims, all of their claimed methods, and actually scrutinizing it when we have all the information, right? Because that's all.
Indeed. Unfortunately, I've got to run for the night, but thank you for having me on, and it's a very, very interesting topic for a show, that's for sure, especially time relevant with everything that's going on. A lot of people are looking into this, so this one might get a lot of views just purely because of the subject matter. But
Absolutely,
we'll see.
brother. Appreciate.
All right, well, hopefully I didn't offend too many people. Thanks for having me again, and I'll catch the rest of the stream later when I have time.
Much love. Appreciate you, Jeremiah. Always a pleasure. That is Exotic Propulsion, aka Join the Technicians, your 2 YouTube channels for anyone interested in following the amazing work of Jeremiah Pop. And we got to have you back when you're willing to discuss publicly and published your paper there that you just finished.
Indeed. Yeah, I'll just say the title of it. and give that first paragraph if anybody's interested, because I still have a lot of work to do and reconciling of some of the stuff I put in there, which isn't exactly accurate or is just too vague. So I'm working on that. But the title of the paper is called "On Manipulating Energy, Aether, and the Materium." Subtext: a practical paralogical approach to advanced space-time metric engineering technologies. And I'll just read the first paragraph here. Let us begin with a bold statement. Everything is light. In the beginning, there was light, as Tesla was famously quoted saying in his 1943 Hotel New Yorker interview. There are a great many kinds of accessible energies which continuously persist all around us. Some bounce off, some are absorbed, some can penetrate, and even temporarily exist inside of us. Some will pass straight through, and some are actually generated by us internally or through our interactions with external fields and matter. Of these forms of energy, there are some in particular which are most immediately useful and easily attained at our current level of technology, and we know which forms these are well. And so basically this paper gets into how to access other energies that exist in frequency ranges well above or well below anything that we can currently access or generate. So we're talking interatomic frequencies and nucleus frequencies and various things that have extraordinarily short wavelengths, and some which exist purely in extraordinarily long wavelengths, many miles to hundreds of miles or longer. So hopefully we can get something out of this information and build physical devices with it, or at least draw up diagrams and plans for those devices. But we'll get to that when we do.
Right. So I have to add on to that what you have just described. Absolutely beautiful reading there of Tesla's quote, as well as that it dives into what I've also been working on trying to reconcile in my own mind. And it's right, this unified fields, right? And that energy comes in these massive to micro wavelengths and these fields, and that all of that energy can be used essentially and converted into usable energy and exists, and that any physics unified field theory that includes energy, it has to be able to convert one of the types of energy into another one, and that Gil, that's what we're missing, and just wrapping one's mind around the full concept of the spectrum of the waves and what energy is, how it works, and how it interacts, and how much we truly are missing in our modern understanding and engineering applications. It's something else, and I look forward to hearing and seeing more of what you've got with that, Jeremiah.
Thank you very much, Bernie. It's certainly an exciting possibility to explore. And as I said, we'll see what time says about whether or not I've got something here or whether this is just more speculation and we'll go nowhere. So I wish me luck. Wish us all luck.
We know it's so much more, and you've got it. And I'll end this stream in general, as I also have to get going, on the note that it's always a fine line between genius and insanity. So when proposing the new theories and fringe science or breakthrough discoveries, it will always come off or sound, or even the person that puts it forward, from speaking from personal experience as well as your own, it's you question it, you realize that you kind of essentially will sound insane, or the idea sounds crazy or whatever, but that's real science, and that's how we get real breakthroughs, is by thinking outside the box, by putting together actionable tests and experiments, and then conducting those, and then having real science and real results. Right?
Well, I'm guilty of all that, most certainly, and anybody who knows me will agree that I very much walk that line between genius and insanity, and I prefer to roller coaster my way between the two extreme sides, passing well into insanity and well into genius, so that I can get those extreme perspectives. Ben, it's certainly not an approach for everyone, and it does equal some pretty wild ideas that are almost entirely unprovable when they first come out. And sometimes those ideas take me years to finally develop to the point where I have physical apparatus and devices on my lab bench that I can prove demonstrations with. But like that's just the natural pace of it. But if we never explore those extremes, if we never let up on the skepticism enough, deeply enough or long enough to genuinely consider, we don't know if this is true, but if it was, how would it work? And it's in that perspective of not knowing and being okay with actually not knowing, not having enough evidence at all to draw any solid conclusions, yet still being able to explore that concept as if it were true, where we glean these much more deep, meaningful, philosophical, metaphysical, and scientific understandings.
Right. Well, and to put that into a more relative understanding of what's gone wrong with our modern way, it's like there's theoretical physics, and well, that's what it is. You got to theorize, come up with something, but it's like it also has to be testable, and like the engineering side of our world, society, academic, it's like they've been taught not to think outside the box, and that the only ones that have come up with this, the best they have is the string theory, and it's like you can't even test it. Sure, it works mathematically, but it's one out of a billion ideas, and that you got to come up with ways to test all of the ideas, and that is how we will truly get breakthroughs and a better understanding of the anomalies, and not be afraid to test the boundaries of reality, of existence, and space-time itself, because that's the dimension we're currently needing to actually engineer, and that you're working on.
And then there's of course the completely opposite side of that, which is the time-space aspect, that approach which Tesla preferred, in opposition to Einstein's space-time, which considers a matter-centric universe completely devoid of everything else except for that matter, and all electromagnetic waves and other disturbances being produced or sourced from the matter. Whereas Tesla considered that the matter was sourced from the background or from the light, and was just one form that it could exist in, having a very aether-centric view of the universe instead of a matter-centric view of the universe. And if we kind of flip the script on GR, we get a very different picture of cause and effect, or source and sink.
I did not know that, and I absolutely love that. And on that note, we shall end this tonight, and we will start back another episode specifically on that. And thank you all for watching.
Good night.
You crazy mother. Yeah.
It's just Bernie. Bernie, just like last week, huh?